question would be for me. What do you see is one of the most difficult thing or the biggest challenge, especially when the first slide that you showed, most, as you said, most of the cities that are already built to a certain density, of course, some of it perhaps owned by private in private hands, lying in risk situation. So I could see in the later work perhaps easier, right? When we can choose where to build, it's almost a no-brainer. But what are the challenges and how do you overcome problems of the city that are so entrenched in the situation that it already is? And of course the following question is how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's time to take advantage of regeneration of cities. I think that's one of the things that is very key now. There are pieces of land within a city that developers, for example, who are desperate for having kind of central locations, they would buy up pieces of land and relocate certain communities away. And I feel in talking to the local communities, these are the kind of really the kind of very slim chances where they're regenerating cities to take advantage of that and actually get developers to take ownership of not only their own property but also the rebuilding of settlements in a safer way. But also as architects and engineers, I think finding ways, engaging with NGOs of retrofitting and coming up with cheap ways of protecting the inhabitants. You might not get a building that would withstand the earthquake completely, but at least give the occupants a chance for survival. And I think this is a challenge, a design challenge, of course, for architects and engineers alike, because the uptake of, for example, insurance and housing that it's completely seismic-proof or flood-proof is very difficult. But actually engaging with simple techniques for life safety is not.
Sure.
That's the opportunity there.
Right. And especially working in the scale of the city, how much do you think that is to do with legislation and how much to do with design?
There's a lot of politics involved, and we all know, kind of working in construction, how many levels of people you have to involve in terms of getting a product from design right through to construction. And the building codes and actually implementation with contractors and having strong building control is something that's it's a big problem. And I think training local builders and engaging with the more kind of self-built community is something that we can do. And I guess one of my pet kind of projects really is to engage with local communities who want to build in a modern way, so they build with concrete and engineered material, but they can't afford to build properly with the engineered material, and they do badly in the hazardous environments because they're just weights that are waiting to fall down. So again, going back to training and engaging with local communities and really trying to involve them in thinking that actually what they've done in the past, they don't want to live in mud shacks, but actually there's a middle ground where they're progressing and they're moving out of poverty and out of kind of the traditional building form, but actually it's something that the West would like to adopt as well, so you've got to go from both sides.
Okay. So you mentioned, it has also a lot to do with culture and politics in the sites that you work with. Yeah. Can you share perhaps with the audience and with me an example of the challenge that you see? Which were the sites, the city, that you found the most difficult to surmount?
I think it's how much, and I think that's a question for all of us in terms of working in countries where they've always done things a certain way. They've always, I mean, even Japan, for example. I was there last year after the tsunami to have a look at the reconstruction works, and there's so much pride involved, and you're not trying to almost dictate what they should be doing. And obviously, everybody has their own opinions about the speed of recovery and the speed of reconstruction. But it is very difficult because they have their own way of building, they have their own way of legislation. So the example would be they're building these 12-meter sea walls for the next tsunami. And they are, this is a decree that's gone all the way along the 300-kilometer coastline. And they're fishing villages which have evacuated very well. 5 out of 500 people died because of lack of evacuation. But that's a small percentage compared to what the disaster really was. And I think the balance between risk-taking and actually protecting the community, but also the politics involved is very, very difficult to resolve. And unfortunately, these fishing villages who've been there for centuries would have to live with this 9-12 metre seawall, and I think that's a shame.
We struggle with. Okay, well, we've 5 minutes, so thank you very much, Emma.
Thank you very much.